Hello, and welcome to my tiny tarot practice. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and this is my tiny tarot practice, our card by card exploration of the tarot, starting with the minor arcana. Today's card is the Four of Pentacles. In the Rider-Waite-Smith edition of the Four of Pentacles features a person wearing a crown, wrapped in luxurious garments, seated on what appears to be a throne in front of a city. And they have a pentacle on top of their head, in their arms, which are wrapped above and below the pentacle in front of their chest, and then a pentacle under each foot. These pentacles then kind of trace the figure. We've got the top, the center, the bottom, but they also do appear to really almost like a protective force, like they're blocking the head, the chest, the feet, so that nothing quite touches. Our vital centers don't quite touch the earth or anything else. As a result, tarot interpreters like Rachel Pollack see this as a card of selfishness, I would say even perhaps of hoarding. And Jessica Crispin also talks about how this can be a card of restriction. Jessica Dorr refers to it as a card about blocks and talks about how it just looks blocked. This person looks like a block and they are blocked. You know, these are my favorite tarot books or authors of tarot books that I'm always referencing on this podcast. And it was interesting when I turned to their interpretations of the Four of Pentacles. It didn't quite resonate for me. I have to be honest. I do think this is a card about the precariousness of security. Maybe that's how I want to say it. The Four of Pentacles feels like a card about security to me. And security can be beautiful and supportive. Security can be about being resourced so that we can be supportive, being supported in order to be supportive, being served in order to be of service. But security can also be about being blocked. It can block us from deep connection. It can block us from bliss. It can block us from openness to the world that actually brings in the joy and the grief that comes alongside being, I want to say, like naked to our experiences, but maybe it's just more about being open to what the world brings us. And so in this card, we do see this figure kind of hunched over, kind of constricted. It feels like they're wrapped around themselves and their pentacles. But I don't think they look unhappy. When I look at their face, it seems kind of serene. So I'm not so willing to make a judgment about the emotional or moral nature of this card. I think upon pulling it in a reading, I would invite myself or invite you to think about the role that security is playing in my life at that time, or the role that discipline or restriction is playing in my life. Because sometimes discipline can be exactly the medicine we need. And sometimes it can be an oppressive force that is harming us. And often it's up to us to know the difference. And that can be so hard to attune to. I mean, many of my favorite thinkers and practitioners talk about discipline as devotion. And I think that those two can intertwine and be so beautiful. And that's how this card often feels to me. We can be disciplined in relationship to our resources. We can be devoted to being resourced. And that can be positive or negative in our lives. Being disciplined in relationship to our resources can be about creating the safety that we need to be free in the world, or it can be miserly and really stuck and inconsiderate of others. You know, it's not up to the tarot or to me to judge what's the case for you. But this card, I think, invites those questions, invites us to think about structure, about discipline, about security. Perhaps especially in relationship to resources, our material resources, our energetic resources, our physical resources, as with the pentacles. And some of us, when we ask those questions, will decide we need more discipline, and some of us will decide we need less. Some of us will need to be more devoted, and some of us might perhaps need to break free. Some of us might only break free through becoming more devoted. What a beautiful lesson It's one of the core tensions of my life, of my astrological chart. And I'm so glad to have spent this time with the Four of Pentacles and to see this card in a different way, to have tapped into it with a different, or for a different medicine. If you enjoyed this episode of my tiny tarot practice, please consider leaving us a rating or review on Apple or Spotify so that more people can hear these short, sweet missives about the cards of the tarot. As always, if you'd like to reference any of my favorite books or decks, you can find a link in the show notes to our bookshop page. If you make a purchase through that link, I'll receive a small affiliate payment, and that helps keep this podcast going. I hope today's episode invites you to check in with your resources, to ask where you're feeling secure and what that feeling means for you. And I will see you or hear you all soon.